Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our discussion of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, and we have really been bringing in, an awful lot of ancillary type of information, of linkages with Old Testament prophecies, with linkages with Old Testament themes and motifs. And one of those is the realization that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is really a description of what was to happen in Israel's last days. I've shared with you that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is based upon Joel chapter 2 and chapter 3. Joel chapter 2 and chapter 3 said it should come to pass in the last days. Spirit would be poured out. And you have the great and the terrible day of the Lord of Joel chapter 2, 31 and 32. In that day and at that time, the Lord said, I will gather all nations to judgment. That's Matthew chapter 25, 31, when the Son of Man would come in the glory, or in glory, with his angels. Then shall he sit on the throne of his glory, and all nations of the earth shall be gathered before him. And so we have parallel passages, and let me just say again, all right? I well realize that some of the precise linguistics are not found in Matthew chapter 25 that are found in Joel chapter 2 and chapter 3. That doesn't mean that they're not talking about the same thing. I have said this on many, many occasions, and I just have to keep reminding us of this important hermeneutical fallacy that is employed by the opponents of covenant eschatology. Steve Gregg, for instance, in his 2022 book entitled, Why Not Full Preterism? Constantly throughout the entirety of the book, makes appeal to the fact, well, passage A gives the following constituent elements. Passage B does not give those same identical elements. Therefore, passage B is talking about something different. He does that, for instance, with the New Testament predictions of the coming of the Lord. And he'll go to some passages which have unequivocal time statements on them, and then he'll run over to other passages which do not contain explicit time statements and say, see, they must be dealing with two separate events. Folks, that doesn't even make good nonsense. It is strictly illogical. I think Milton Terry said it best in his book, Biblical Hermeneutic, and I can get you the exact quote. But he was commenting on Acts chapter 1, 9 and following, where the angel told the apostles, you men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into the heavens? This same Jesus who is taken from you shall come in like manner as you have seen him go. And the opponents of preterism say, see, there's no time statement in Acts chapter 1. And Milton Terry responded by saying, and I think correctly so, it is certainly an abuse of logic and hermeneutic to say that simply because Acts chapter 1 does not contain the same identical time element statements found in other New Testament passages does not mean it's a different event. I have said this, I will say it, and I will say it. This missing word, different word hermeneutic, is absolutely false. And as I just stated, Steve Gregg employs it throughout the entirety of his book. He says, for instance, and I won't take too long on this, but he says Daniel 12 is not the same resurrection as John 5, 28 and 29. Now, he admits, by the way, that he's swimming upstream against the tide of tradition and history and commentary on that. But you know the reason that he doesn't think they're the same, that he will not allow them to be speaking of the same thing. Because he knows and understands that Daniel chapter 12 was a prediction of AD 70. Thus, if he admits that John 5, 28 and 29 is directly parallel, synchronous, and synonymous with Daniel chapter 12, his futurism goes out the window. Similar positions are taken by many futurists. They understand the power of Daniel chapter 12. And therefore they argue, oh, well, Daniel 12 is a different resurrection from John 5, 28 and 29, or from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, or from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. No, it's not, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so enough on that hermeneutical issue in which we must be constantly aware. And by the way, in the book that I am trying desperately to finish, my working title at the moment is Sukkot, Resurrection Fulfilled. That was my recommendation as I thought more and more and more about it. But I'm still waiting on good suggestions from you. And if I choose a suggestion from one of you, then you're going to get a free copy, autographed, if that means anything to you, a free autographed copy of that book when it is published. It's currently well over 400 pages long. And so don't forget, if you've got a good name, a catchy name, short, succinct, powerful, for this book, which is an investigation of the fulfillment of Israel's feast days through the resurrection of the dead. Okay? Pardon me. So send that to me. All right. So I've been sharing with you that Deuteronomy chapter 32 is the template for Matthew 25, 31 and following. Even though, all right, pay very careful attention to me here, back to the hermeneutical issue. Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following does not quote from the Song of Moses. It does not use the identical linguistics as the Song of Moses. However, it is talking about the last days. It is talking about the coming of the Lord in the last days. It is talking about the judgment in the last days, all of which are mentioned, foretold, and predicted in the Song of Moses, Deuteronomy chapter 32. Now, the key issue here is Deuteronomy 32 tells us three times. Deuteronomy 31, 29, which is the prelude, the introduction to the song, Moses said, I know that after my death, you will become utterly corrupted, so I will tell you what shall befall you in the last days. So, point number one, the Song of Moses is about Israel's fate in her last days. Point number two, Deuteronomy 32, 19 to 21, oh, that they were wise, oh, that they would consider what their last end shall be. Deuteronomy chapter 32, 29 to 31, Israel's last days. Now, since Deuteronomy chapter 32 is about the last days and it's about the judgment, and it is about salvation, righteousness, and that's what Matthew chapter 25, 31 is all about, then we would be hard-pressed to be able to divide those two chapters, to divorce them from each other. And over the last couple of weeks, I've shared with you how important it is to look at very carefully the closing theme, the closing motif of Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 43. Rejoice, all ye Gentiles, with my people. for the Lord will avenge the blood of his saints. So here's the promise that in Israel's last days, many generations removed from Moses, Deuteronomy 32, 5-7, Israel would become utterly corrupt, Deuteronomy 31:29. God would turn his face from them because there would be a people of no understanding, a people of no wisdom, which Jesus quoted in Matthew 17:17, applying it to his generation. And then we come right down to verse 43 that teaches us in Israel's last days, God would avenge the blood of the martyrs. Now look, last week I shared with you how this theme of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs runs from Genesis all the way, as my friend Jack Scott likes to say, all the way to maps. The maps in the book, back of the Bible. This theme, this motif of martyr vindication permeates eschatological text. It permeates the entire subject of eschatology. Now, here's the tragedy. Most commentators, in fact, I've been doing a survey in my Logos Bible study lately, Bible study program, just reading the commentaries that I have in my Logos program to see if there were any, to see how many of the commentators linked Deuteronomy 32 with Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following. You know how many I found that link Deuteronomy 32 with Matthew 25, 31 and following? 0. Now, I might have missed one, obviously. So I did a search, also did a survey to see how many commentators linked Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following with the doctrine of the avenging of the martyrs. Do you know how many mentioned that subject? Yeah. 0. Now again, I might have missed it. Now, do commentators, as a broad general statement, believe that the judgment of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is somehow, some way related to the avenging of the blood of the martyrs? Well, yes, they do, as a matter of fact, because you very often find commentators commenting on Revelation chapter 6, Revelation 16, Revelation 18, Revelation chapter 20, as predictive of the final, consummate avenging of the blood of the martyrs. So they take Matthew 25, 31, the end of time. They take Revelation chapter 6, and 14 and 16, 17 and 18 and 20 as end of time. So out here somewhere, they've got the doctrine of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs, and out here somewhere, they've got the doctrine of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs, but they don't join them in Matthew chapter 25. Now, am I appealing to a missing word or different word hermeneutic? Not really. Not really at all. I'm simply making the observation of a lacuna, a gap in the teaching of 99.9% of the commentators. Now, the real issue is, do I, Don Preston, believe that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is about the time of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs? And our answer to that is unequivocally yes. And since it is obligatory on us that we look at this doctrine a little bit more in detail. Because if it is the case that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is about the time of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs, then that means that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following was to be fulfilled in AD 70. Now listen, I've urged you to get yourself a copy of Sam Dawson's excellent book, Revelation Realized, Martyr Vindication from Genesis to Revelation. Fantastic book, chock absolutely full of tremendous insights, powerful, logical exegesis. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Beautiful banner right up at the very top. Click on the banner, order the book. Be sure to send me a note that says you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. That will save you $5. Okay, tomorrow, on Thursday, been kind of a short week since I didn't do a video on Monday, but tomorrow we're going to look closer at the doctrine of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs. So I'll see you on the flip side.